Things started getting worse. Already the Isanaut and their child were out of the workforce, joined by the Hilgos, being too weak to be of proper aid to the building. This much we had figured for, that the new arrivals would be dealing with various degrees of starvation, dehydration, and other health issues, and thus not be able to add to our labor force. What we did not plan for, on any level, however, was the temperature drop, and how bad it would hurt us. As night rolled in, we lost the trills to their dormancy cycle, which sucked, but again, there wasn't a ton to be done about it. Then, as I was coming back from a routine check-in on the Ainud and Hilgos, as well as to grab my jacket from my shelter, I spotted Azoku and Chethuxel returning from hunting, but something was off. They were both sort of listing a bit, but it was something that could simply be explained off as simple exhaustion. That is, until Azoku went to speak,
has returned. Ours hunt was going well.
Both Vergal were slipping on tenses, slurring words, and the translators weren't keeping up well. When I looked more closely, despite it being dusk, both of their slitted pupils were like pinpricks, as though they were standing in the noonday sun. Then I remembered an earlier conversation where they had noted that they could become sluggish in sudden temperature shifts. That time had come, and the temperature was continuing to drop. So they joined the others in the first yurt, while the rest of us continued working. Next, it was the Skrens and the Asu who were suffering. Both species were furred, certainly, but apparently they had already shed their winter coats and were now at the mercy of a sudden cold snap. They were going into hypothermia, so both species now had to get inside to warm themselves. Unlike us, their containers had not held extra cold weather gear, the game masters likely making the mistake of believing that fur equaled warmth. Once we had them all tucked away, Val pulled me off to the side.
Okay, so who do we have left? It's us, the Rothani, the Gol, and the Vendrix, yeah? That's what, 8 of us still moving? And the other 10 are down. Even with our infinifabric, it's not insulated. Strong, sure, but it's just a base layer, and potentially some tarp or rope, but it won't keep anyone warm.
I sighed.
Yeah, it's gonna get worse before it gets better too. My money's on the Vendrix needing to bow out next, then the Gol. Come morning, we lose the Rothani, and it'll just be you and me. Hang on a sec.
I hit the green button, and Annabelle came up.
Evening, Keith. We can see you have at least one of the yurts up, and it looks like you're about to finish up a second as night sets in, with the foundations for a third one in the works. But of course, we've heard your talk with Val about losing people to the elements here, even as more are getting ready to arrive.
I smirked. Annabelle was letting me know there were more that would arrive soon, but without directly saying the words, so she wasn't technically cheating.
Oh, certainly. It's being a right pain in the ass on over here. Right now, though, I reckon we're needing us something akin to caffeine, and a bunch of it if we're gonna be fighting at peak efficiency. Sigh. I miss coffee.
Annabelle nodded and smiled as I mentioned coffee.
Certainly. I think it's easy to forget, seeing your progress, just how much you lack in your current environment. We were fascinated with what you're calling infinifabric, or alien cord. There are so many things that you're doing there in exploring how these alien technologies work that have fascinating ramifications for Earth and its future. Have you considered the future ramifications of these technologies as they pertain to Earth's future?
I knew Annabelle was playing a game, a somewhat different one than what we were playing. There was a way that she spoke when we talked that pointed to a bigger scheme. Whether just hers or those on Earth above her, I couldn't guess. But the ways we walked were a matter now of giving each other information.
I mean, ain't really thought about it that much, but y'all gotta figure we're getting a ton of theories confirmed as fact. Humanoid life on other worlds is an obvious one, of course. Then we've got the nanofabrics that are gonna change a lot of the way we're doing things. That's not even accounting for the fact we now know that faster. Then light travel is a thing, rather than just theorizing it, and I'm guessing fusion power. We're learning more and more every day, Miss Annabelle, and I reckon it'll continue just by this whole thing having happened.
Our experts absolutely concur with your assessment there, Keith, but we do have a more personal matter to discuss as well. It seems like things have progressed with you and Val, and I know a lot of folks on Earth are wondering what your feelings are, given the most recent developments.
She had switched subjects pretty quickly, back to something more crowd-pleasing, a possible distraction from the larger context conversations. I nodded. It wasn't hard to work out what the question was going to be.
Well, of course, I'm a good amount disappointed that I can't just get to be your boyfriend and all. But I get it. Everything going on. Her history, my history. We'll just have to see where it goes from here.
Behind me, I heard the sound and saw the flashes of light that told me things had been transported in.
Well, fun as this conversation may be, Miss Annabelle, afraid I'll be needing to go do an unboxing, as it seems we got some deliveries that came in.
I cut the call and went over to a couple of containers of items. Popping them open, I laughed. Cans and bottles of Starbucks drinks, some full packages of peppermint Altoids, and even pouches of tobacco. Whoever was watching on Earth, they were definitely paying attention. Val didn't hesitate for a moment, grabbing 2 cans of triple shot and shaking one up, popping it open immediately. I quirked an eyebrow.
See, I wasn't the only one missing the IV drip of caffeine.
She didn't immediately answer, instead pretty much chugging the whole can straight, then wiping her mouth with the back of her hand.
Not so much that you'd notice. But, I mean, I get the tobacco, since you and the Rothani smoke together, but why Altoids? I love having fresh breath, much as the next girl, but this seems like kind of a lot.
I smiled.
Oh, it ain't about the mints, darling. It's about the tins. Earth just sent us tinder boxes for everyone here, so we can keep dry fire starter on us at all times.
Val smiled, chuckling as she shook her head.
You know, at some point, the Kathrall are going to get tired of our people pulling this shit on them. How many times you think they can get away with passing us back-end survival tools?
I just shrugged and started to open the other container. More of the same, at least I thought so, till I felt a sudden hollow thunk. Moving the stuff on top and pulling back some fabric, I saw and smiled.
Oh, now this is something we really needed.
Val was busily sorting out a ration for the caffeine and just called back.
What did they send?
I reached in and drew out a specifically shaped case and opened it to reveal an old acoustic guitar.
They sent us tunes.
Our first wave of folks came in just after daybreak. The Bausuts, who looked terminally sad around the eyes like a basset hound, and the Egeks with fully black eyes, blood-red skin, and white hair. Both were apprehensive immediately, likely expecting attack, but we got them sorted. Neither of the pairs was in any fit state to be undergoing heavy labor, so they were shown off to the yurts, of which we now had 2.5. There was no way we were going to finish all of the yurts in time for the storm. I figured we might make it to 4 or 5 if we pushed, but with 49 people, that still worked out to at least 9 per yurt. It would be tight quarters for the duration of the storm. The other problem was, my suspicions were true. The Vendricks exhausted out, and despite Marilla's statements to the contrary, had to turn in. A few hours after that, the Goal were getting too sluggish to continue. Both pairs had been with us for, I think, about a week, so as much as they'd been getting properly fed, they were still losing energy to the hardships they faced before. The Rothani finally had to call it as dawn crept over the rise, just before the new arrivals got in. So there was about an hour now where it was just me and Val working. She wasn't having a good time of it.
You know, it wouldn't piss me off so bad at how slow this is if you would stop outpacing me with one fucking arm.
I let out a careful breath, my own patience worn, but training as a combat medic had the effect of training you to deal with a lack of sleep and keep your mouth shut.
Val, you're doing great. This isn't the kind of work you trained in. I was always going to be able to do this. If we were at the gym, your office, or Olympic training grounds, you'd absolutely be taking me out behind the woodshed. It's just different training and muscle groups.
Hey, I don't need you patronizing me.
I'm not. I'm trying to keep us on task, but... Hey, people coming. Take a break while I handle the newcomers.
She didn't give a response, but climbed down off the roof we were working on and headed off in the direction of the campfire. I, meanwhile, welcomed the Bausuts and Egeks, making sure to stretch out the time as much as I could to give Val and I a break. They were more than happy with the broth and little bits of jackalope we gave them. At the same time, Marilla and Fionn rejoined us.
Well, I see you two are getting along famously.
Marilla's had a penchant for stirring the pot, and it was the wrong one to stir. Val started storming toward her, save for me cutting her off, and Fionn stepping in front of Marilla. I caught Val by the arm, who looked like she was ready to make something of it. Now I took exception and let my face settle into the one I'd worn so many times when I served, and I went to a place of eerie calm.
You will go check the catch down at the river. Come back, grab a shower. In that order, and then we will get back to work.
It's a failure to believe that yelling, screaming, and getting loud in general are threatening to most humans. In point of fact, unless you have some point of major intimidation in your corner, you're really just going to make them angrier. However, if you lend your face the right look and talk in the calmest language possible, you can terrify people without ever raising your voice. Val caught it when I said it and stepped back before turning and heading to the river. Marilla stepped out from behind Fionn.
What the hell? I made one little comment.
I sighed.
Yeah, after she's been working straight for the last 24 hours, after not getting to hear from or see her daughter for weeks.
She moved ahead of me as I went to go back to work.
Wait, you two were still working? I assumed the fight broke out after you'd already finished. When did you break for the night?
I screwed up my face in confusion.
We didn't. That was the point of the 24-hour working party. When it got dark, we just lit up some torches to help us see, and kept going.
Marilla grabbed my wrist, as she'd seen me do before to check pulse.
And you're both fine?
I mean, I wouldn't say we're doing great, but we can keep at it. Val just needs a minute.
I replied, kind of bobbing my head in consideration.
Your species is terrifying.
And with that, Marilla went to meet the new people and get her own food and broth. Fionn followed shortly behind, shaking his head. I used one arm to pull myself back onto the roof we were working on and kept moving as best I could. Everything was just sore, and the break in the action had made it worse, not better. Before, I had the bravado of adrenaline on my side, but stopping to deal with everything had let it drop off. I was fading pretty bad when the next wave of arrivals showed up. It was just a slog. Every time we got a good rhythm going, another batch of folks showed up. Marilla and Fionn concentrated on doing the camp work, which helped, but it would be almost noon before we got Treg and Hoda back in. The goal usually had some sort of commentary to make, or some bold claim to their own prowess, but they were completely silent, followed every single order as given whether it came from me or Val, and were the most genuinely helpful they had been the entire time they'd been with us. Marilla took Prodigal and moved her work down to the field, letting them handle any further arrivals. It was a small blessing, but I'd take any I could get. Val called for rope, and without consideration, I simply popped off the wall, jogged to the container, and one arm swung back up as best I could, and noticed the goal just staring up at us. Only it wasn't just the goal. Newcomers and old hands alike, folks about the camp, were staring up at us as we worked.
We fuck something up, guys?
Treg answered.
How are you even standing? You have both worked since yesterday morning.
Oh, fuck's sake, I ain't got time for this, y'all. Yeah, we've been taking some stimulants we got sent and adrenaline. We're both fine, but we can't really stop, so go hunt down Marilla and get assigned whatever work y'all are up to.
I did note there were a lot of dead Starbucks containers laying around. By now, I'd probably consumed somewhere near a gallon of triples myself. We couldn't keep up the pace eternally, either of us, and as soon as we stopped this time, we would be fully out. The Rathani eventually rejoined, going to get more lumber, with Treg and Hoda hauling it up, throwing hard into the work. Others worked on making more alien cord, then braiding it into rope, while Marilla had a massive side project going, making what looked like a truly insane tarp down in the field. Seriously, what the hell could the woman need with a single piece of cloth that big? I got tired of hopping down and up, and when we finished the fourth shelter, I simply jumped over to the wall, what would be the fifth. We just laid in the frame for the roof when I got the telltale beep from my wrist. Exasperated, I hit the button with more force than I'd intended.
Dude, I swear to Christ, not a great fucking time.
Ravashtik was taken aback.
Excuse me?
I grunted, pulling a roll of tarp up from Shin, who scurried back off.
What do you want? We've got, what, a dozen or so hours before this storm nails us? We don't really have time for some cute human interest piece.
I downed the rest of my drink and tossed the can down while Ravajatik composed himself, and I got back to work.
Well, Survivor Keith, there's news that you should hear. First, we concur with the estimations of the human climate scientists, and it is our advisement that you evacuate the area.
Val and I responded at the same time, but
Fuck off!
Ravajatik startled again, and we started draping tarp, shaking our heads, and smiling at each other. They were the first words we'd actively spoken with one another in hours.
Survivor Keith, Survivor Val, I do not like this lack of respect.
We flipped him off. It was a game now, the game of people who'd been awake for more than 36 hours and figured there was nothing to lose. He didn't find it nearly as amusing as we did, though it did take him a quick moment for someone to tell him what the gesture meant.
That is enough. I will not tolerate this sort of insubordinate behavior any further.
I scoffed openly.
Ooh, what are you gonna do there, Rav? Send us to our room? Or, oh, I know, dump us on an uncolonized alien planet with the entire galaxy watching us all day.
Val had me, though, and she put on an even more girly expression.
Ooh, hurt me, alien daddy.
I was barking with laughter and crying at the same time.
I'm so proud of you.
The transmission cut out around that point, and after thoroughly trolling him for a minute, we got back to work on the roof while the posts for the fifth yurt were already going in the ground. Skrens and Asu dug the holes with Hoda and Treg dropping the posts into them after Fionn and the Vergal stripped them down from the first yurt. It was a while afterward when the beep came again, and I was laughing.
So, should I pick up then immediately hit privacy mode?
Val cracked with her own laughter.
Oh, that would be awesome, but nah. Let's just get this done.
I brought Ravajatik up.
Hey there, alien daddy, long time no see. What can I do you for?
Val snorted her drink through her nose and choked a moment as Ravajatik pointedly ignored my comment.
Sigh. The other piece of news concerns the Emperor. May he reign eternal. As mentioned, he has agreed to the terms of your challenge and 2 points. The first is the rules of the game are being reconfigured to address your little anomaly of play. Second, your challenge. When the storm has passed, you will undertake an arduous journey to the other side of the continent. Complete all the challenges along the route, and you get back those competitors that have already lost.
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button or becoming a channel member. Your generosity helps us bring you more stellar stories. Every bit counts. Thanks a bunch.